Introduce myself first and foremost. My name is Michael Cappellini, and I am the National Brand Ambassador for Manifatture Cigar Toscano, or as we say in English, Toscano Cigars. Tonight I'm going to give you a little bit of a presentation on our cigar, the historical significance of our cigar, the complexities of our cigars, and we're also going to do a little bit of a pairing to help you grasp exactly what Cigar Toscano is about. Essentially, when we do pairings with our cigars, it's to really understand the complexity, the composition of not only our cigar, but also of the alcohol that we're drinking. I'll start with the historical significance of what is Toscano Cigars. That dates back all the way to 1850. So, in 1850, well, actually, let me reverse that a little bit more. It starts in Christopher Columbus's time. When Christopher Columbus came to the United States, he visited what is now known as Kentucky and Tennessee.
Not Georgia?
Not Georgia. Not Georgia, not Virginia, not Florida. You know, it's a little different geographics at that point. But he landed in the region that is now Kentucky and Tennessee. When he did, he was gifted seed for tobacco. So essentially, when he got here, he was gifted by the Indians these seeds because tobacco in Italy wasn't common. When he did that, he returned to Italy and they had planted. Thank you, Willie. He had planted the seed right outside of Florence. Fast forward to 1815. 1815, after a couple years of harvesting and cultivation, they harvested a bunch of this tobacco, which is again Kentucky, Tennessee seed. Before they were able to cover the tobacco or bring it into a building, an unfortunate rainstorm came. It was mid-August, hot and humid in Florence, and a massive rainstorm came and soaked all of the tobacco. When that happened, the tobacconists feared what would happen to them, because obviously they had to go to Duke Ferdinand and tell him at that point this tobacco is ruined, which is not something you want to do at that point. Unfortunately, if they did do that, they'd be dragged into the city center. Today, when you visit the city center, it's a beautiful thing. Back then, if you get dragged there by the Duke, it's a different story. You're there for a reason that you don't want to be there for.
Right.
So, they were there, and they were trying to decide what to do with this tobacco. They had no idea what to do. So one tobacconist said, well, listen, let's just let it sit in the sun. Maybe the sun will dry it out. It'll make it a little bit pliable for us to use. So they did that. And after about 10 to 12 days, the ammonia smell from the fermentation of the tobacco became so strong that the neighbors started to complain about it. So if you think about it, when you cut your grass, do you guys cut grass down here in Florida? I don't.
Yeah.
So when you guys, you hire, right, it's okay.
I got a Mexican.
So let me take a step back.
Why do you have to talk about my country like that?
Let me take a step back.
Because I look brown, I have to be. You have to say Mexican.
As they were cutting, okay, all right, basta. As they were doing
you lose
this,
control?
I
never had control.
When he's here, I never have control. It's like when you cut your grass and you let it sit overnight. The dew sits on top of the grass, then the sun comes and hits it. It starts to get hot. You can see the steam rising off of it, and when you stick your hand underneath it, it's actually a very high temperature. That's the natural fermentation process. That's what happened to our tobacco. So when the neighbors started to complain about the smell, they said, the tobacconist said, we got to do something. We're done. It's not going to end well for us. One very optimistic tobacconist said, you know what? Hold on, I have an idea. I have a barn about a mile down the road. I'm going to clear out the barn. I'm going to string strings across the barn, and we're going to lay the tobacco over the strings and light a fire underneath to see if we can make the tobacco more pliable. Then, henceforth, Kentucky, Tennessee seed, Cigar Toscano fire-cured tobacco.
Hence the science of tobacco curing.
It's unbelievable.
The seed grows.
That's it.
Right.
That's right. And we are, to that point, we are the very first company that started fire curing tobacco. Really? Yes. Don't forget, that's 1818 that happened. Fast forward, and then fast forward to a year later, we mass produced for the entire peninsula of Italy. Duke Ferdinand started to smoke it. Nobility caught on. The Europeans then wanted, when they were coming over, were interested in Cigar Toscano. Fast forward to today. What year is it? 2019, right? We are in 65 different countries, and last year we sold 230 million cigars.
Wow.
230 million cigars. And a lot of people don't understand that Italy is such a large tobacco producer.
What's your demographics on the cigar?
It's interesting. It depends on, well, first and foremost, it depends on geography. For example, in Italy, we have 97% share of the tobacco industry in Italy. So across the entire, no, but what I'm saying is across the entire spectrum, young and old, men and women smoke.
Depending on the cigar that's
Correct. And again, we'll get into that in a minute on the different profiles that we have of our cigars. Additionally, something interesting to understand is just the fact that our cigars have become such a way of life for everybody. Even here in America, in the past, we've been mass distributed now through Miami Cigar Company, who Willie works for. We've been mass distributed through them for about 2.5 or 3 years. We have seen astronomical growth, especially in the last year. I'm not going to say that's because I joined the company a year ago, but I'm just going to throw that factoid out there. When I joined the company, we grew 92% year over year. I don't know.
You're cute.
I don't know if there's an actual
They
correlation
like your
there or
selfie.
not, but I'm hoping that my boss in Italy is watching this so he can
You
see.
missed one part of the history that by the time that filtered up to Kentucky, it had already been perfected. The science had been perfected in Georgia. They were
Well,
early tobacco farmers.
That's up to argument.
No,
Because
no,
we've
that's
been told this story many a
historical
time.
fact.
It's actually not. We were the very first company to fire cure Kentucky Tennessee seed tobacco.
Disregarding anything he says is historical.
Research it.
Go ahead. You're welcome to. 1818 was the very first year. Actually, 1815 was the
I
very
remember
first
where.
year. You remember that? you were about what, 4 or 5 at that.
I was in grade school.
So now we'll take another step forward. Again, we're in 65 different countries. Last year we sold 230 million cigars. I'd like to talk a little bit about our stance in America, because even though we've only been mass distributed here in the U.S. for 3 years, our presence has been known for generations in cinema. One of the most famous people that ever smoked Sigaro Toscano would be Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood smoked all the Sigaro Toscano in the spaghetti westerns.
Make my day.
That's right. The story behind that is really funny. So essentially, Sergio Leone was the director at that point.
Right.
And he asked Clint Eastwood to join him as an actor. When he did so, he asked Clint Eastwood to smoke the cigar. And Clint Eastwood looked at it, just like every first-time Toscano cigar smoker says, there's no way I'm smoking that. It looks like a stick. There's no way that's a good cigar. There's no way, shape, or form. So Sergio Leone said to him very simply, he said, I'm a fairly famous director. You're a very new actor. I have a lot of films. You don't. If you want to become somebody, I want you to smoke this cigar. Otherwise, there's the door.
And he smoked cigars prior to that?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And sure enough, Clint Eastwood smoked the cigar. Yeah. And it's later on if you want to, you can walk in. The book is there. It's open to his picture with him with the Sigaro Toscano.
Reliving that.
Oh yeah.
Many times later on.
Oh yeah. I don't know if he still. Everybody always asks me if he still smokes. I'm not 100% sure if he. I want to say probably not, but again, I'm not 100% sure about that. Additionally, an interesting factoid about Sigaro Toscano is that Marlon Brando was won over to do the part of the Godfather over Sigaro Toscano. Francis Ford Coppola and Scorsese were big Toscano smokers. So they were at a table and they had brought a bunch of different Italian pairings to do. Limoncello, Montepulciano, dell'Abruzzo, all this beautiful Italian, Reggiano Parmigiano, Parmigiano Reggiano. And the last thing they did was give a cigar. Now, in Italian, we call Toscano il sigaro dell'amicizia, or the cigar of friendship. If you notice, we cut the cigar in half. The cigars are usually about this length. They're about 6 by 38, if you will. The tradition in Italy is to go right below the band, cut it in half, and share it with another person. At that point, you share that initial bond of the cigar, and then you sit and you solve the world's problems together.
Can I tell you that down in southern Italy, that's not practiced?
Oh yes, my grandfather's from Sicily.
Those Neapolitans, Naples, down in that.
Well, yeah, but our factory,
Someone born and raised in Georgia.
our factory for our short.
Not that I want to counter argue your argument against Michael in any kind of state for that. But I just got back from southern Italy
Napoli.
less than a week ago.
Napoli.
We were in Napoli, we did the Amalfi Coast, and everywhere I sat, they were breaking this up in half. So, sir, have your beer, light up the cigar, and get yourself a bourbon, because you just argumentative.
And now the other side of it too is to counteract that also to tell the honest to God truth. Our factory that makes the short format cigars, the cigars that are cut in half, is actually right outside of Napoli in Cappellini. We actually they make the cigars there full. They fire cure them with the different aromas that we have, which I'll talk about in a second, and they cut them in half and they sell them that way. So there are a lot of cigars that are sold, as we call them, ammezzato, or cut in half. Another, obviously, if you look at if you watch a couple of the Colombo episodes, you'll see that Colombo smokes these. Not in every episode, because he does have the normal Caribbean cigars, but a lot of the time he does smoke Sigaro Toscano. What's that?
I got a question now.
Sure.
Have you used the thicker gauge? Because I know over in Europe they like the smaller gauge.
Yeah. No, this is the largest ring gauge that Sigaro Toscano has is around 41. But the beauty about Toscano too is no Toscano cigar is the same. And that has a lot to do with our cigar rollers. We have 40 female cigar rollers in our Lucca factory. They're all female. 18 months of apprenticeship to roll your first Toscano cigar. That's what it takes.
Wow.
The second side of that is that they were one of the very first female labor movements in the world. Yeah. They were being treated horribly. They were being accused of stealing. Obviously, they were being groped to see if there was tobacco in their dresses. So they said to the Italian Republic, well, if it was the Republic at that point, but even today, Italian is still, even though we fall under the same flag, each province and each city is its own mindset, if you will. So they went to the Italian Republic and said, "This is ridiculous. We're being treated horribly. We want equal rights for equal pay." And the government said, "Go ahead, walk. We don't need you." 2 weeks later, it took 2 weeks for them to come back to the table, and they got their equal pay for equal rights.
Great. So would that be because their hands are more pliable because they're rolling than men?
Well, there's two sides. Yes, and then also for Sigaro Toscano, everything's done with passion and love. You can't really do that without having a hand touch. Even our cigars that are machine rolled, we hooked up sensors to all of our cigar rollers and measured their motions about 25 years ago down to the millimeter to keep up with demand. Obviously, each of our 40 cigar rollers rolls 500 cigars a day for about 340 days out of the year. That's a lot of cigars still, but not even close to keep up with 230 million per year. So we did have to keep up with demand and roll. So each of our devices actually get down to the millimeter of their hand motions, which is why even our machine rolled cigars will not all look the same. They'll all be a little bit different.
And they look the same as the hand cigar.
What's that?
They look the same.
Same exact.
So what's the incidence of arthritis?
That's a great question. I don't know that answer. I have no idea. That is, I would say probably a little bit higher than most other professions.
It's a short window of
I would say that
ability.
to be the case. Our tobacco too, just so you know, 70% of our tobacco is harvested and fire cured in Italy. 5 different regions: Umbria, Veneto, Toscana, Lazio, and Campania. So again, our Lucca factory, where they hand roll our long formats, is in Toscana. Our short formats are made down in Campania near Napoli in the town called Cappellini, like I said earlier. The story about the cigar being cut in half is actually an interesting one. It happened during World War I. At that time, they were all similar to his story. At one point, they really weren't cutting the cigars in half all over Italy. Then the war came, and rations started to happen.
Was it just Toscana cigars?
In Italy, that's the only cigar.
I swear, the ones I ever had, no one ever offered.
Yeah. Well, but again, you have to understand too. Sigaro Toscano.
That's after they met you.
But Sigaro Toscano, the reason, before I continue the story about the war, it's a great question. Sigaro Toscano can be cut in half because we don't have a binder. There's no binder on our cigars. It's just a wrapper and filler. There's no binder on our cigars. So then essentially, if you go and cut one of the cigars that's in the humidor right now, you cut it, the binder's going to start to rip, and when you light it, the binder's going to light first, and it's going to canoe and cause havoc. These will not. Correct. These will not that will not happen this way. So during World War I, the rations came, and cigars weren't as high of a demand. So the cigar rollers took a step back, and they weren't rolling as many because essentially they were wasting the tobacco. Then the war ended, and everybody wanted Cigar Toscano again because money started to flow back into the economy. So in order to keep up with that demand, they started to cut the cigars in half, and they sold them into half. So everything that happens with our cigars actually has a historical significance. It's absolutely incredible. Well before this, the unification of Italy, Garibaldi started to smoke these too. Garibaldi, obviously, and Vittorio Emanuele were the two that united Italy in the middle and formed what is now, in 1861, the Italian Peninsula. So they used to smoke them. In fact, legend has it, obviously I wasn't there, legend has it is that they shared a Cigar Toscano because the Italian proverb is true trust is when two men walk arm in arm up the street talking about the future. True friendship is when they walk arm in arm up the street and cut a Cigar Toscano in half and share it. Yeah. So, any questions thus far?
My wife called me doing that. She was so pissed.
Any questions or concerns? No.
She was really pissed.
Now the tobacco again. I want to reiterate the fact that our tobacco is top leaf Lajero tobacco. So our in the harvesting season, we ensure that we cut off the flower once it starts to bloom, in order for the top leaf to get all of the attention. To prevent germination, we have about, I don't know the amount of people, but they go around with a specific, almost like a glue, and touch the portion of the leaf that was cut, so germination can't happen, and you can't get hybrids of the plants. Our process is incredibly labor intensive. Our fire curing process. Every 3 hours for our fire curing process, which can last up to 21 days, throughout the fire curing process, every 3 hours a man is cutting down trees, stoking the fire, and re-adding to the fire to ensure the flame stays at the proper temperature. And, of course, they have to rotate the leaves to ensure that they don't become too dry. Because if they become too dry, they're not pliable enough. Our fermentation process is submerging the leaf itself in water completely and pumping oxygen into it with a continual flow of water. That allows the leaf to naturally ferment. When that's done, it's extracted from the water, and we fire cure it. When it's in the water, the natural oils and the essential resin rise to the top of the leaf. As it's draped over the leaf and the fire hits it, those resins and oils are locked in. Therefore, you do not need to humidify these cigars. There's no need to humidify these cigars. People ask me, well, will they last 3 years? I mean, I think at any point something starts to not exactly be the same cigar. However, the beauty about Cigar Toscano, if you leave it outside of your humidor and it becomes a little bit too dry, put it back inside your humidor for a day or two. Just a day or two. To loosen up the tobacco a little bit, and it'll smoke just like it did the first day that you opened it, took it out of the cellar. Correct.
Do you use a specific type of wood or?
That's a great.
varieties of
Thank
wood?
you for asking me that. That's the next thing I was going to say. So, the differential in our tobacco in America, 30% of our tobacco is fire cured and harvested here. We use hickory wood. So the hickory wood gives it a much more mesquite barbecue sentiment and flavor to it. In Italy, hickory is not a wood that's deciduous of that area. So no, they actually use oak. Oak. So we fire cure with oak. And when we fire cure with oak, it allows for a very obviously oaky, light flavor with hints of butter on the back end. So what we're smoking today is actually the Toscano Classico, which is all Italian tobacco from Tuscany and Umbria.
Why wouldn't they just use oak here?
Because, well, that's a great question. The reason being is because we wanted a differential. And some people, at one point when they started to roll the cigars, because we started to use American tobacco, I think in the 60s. And we did that, what's that? Always Kentucky, Tennessee. Always Kentucky, Tennessee. Always. So they wanted a little bit of a differential. So the master blender said, well, let's use a wood that's not deciduous in Italy, and that's why we have the hickory that we have here in the U.S. That's why we use hickory.
The long ones?
Yep. Here? No. Every product that Cigar Toscano has is made in Italy and imported back to the United States. So, for example, we have a long format that's called the 1492. Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I say that every time, and I want to cringe every time I say it. I feel like I'm a 4-year-old in preschool again. But that tobacco is harvested and fire cured here, shipped to Italy for rolling, final aging, and then imported back to the United States. because Sigaro Toscano is so bent on having their product perfectly made that they refuse to let anybody else touch it, other than our people. 200 years, the same exact process. Obviously, we've added things, like I said, the American tobacco. We started doing the aromatic cigars that we have in there in 2002. They didn't always exist. But we've had, you know, like I said, since World War I. Even before that, people were cutting them in half, but it really started during World War I when the rations happened. So at this point, I would invite everybody to light up the Classico that was provided and start enjoying a little bit. Start enjoying the tobacco. Oh, you're 3 steps ahead of us. What's that? Yeah. Ammazzato, we say. Ammazzato. Literally, sigaro ammazzato means the cigar was murdered.
Or emasculated.
Or you can go that way too. I don't want to. But ammazzato, to ammazzare, is the verb to kill. So enjoy the smoke a little bit. As you're doing that, I'm going to hand out some Fernet Branca. Fernet, I have you got some. Okay. Well, try.
Is the fertilizer and the growth process local or is that imported?
So here in the United States, it's all local to the region. All local to the region. But our people now, we bought the farm itself. So now our people were always over here. We were always sending people over to ensure that everything was done, the fertilization was done properly, etc. Now it's ours. Toscano Villa USA is now our factory in Tennessee. Same thing in Italy. It's all localized there. The great thing about this, and Toscano for me has a special place in my heart. Obviously, number one, because I'm the brand ambassador. But the craziest thing about Sigaro Toscano was when I went over for my training last year. I traveled with my counterpart, Teddy Nesti, and he's like the sommelier of cigars and alcohols and everything that go perfectly with Toscano, etc., etc. So I went to the Lucca factory. And as I'm in Lucca, I said, well, thank you so much. There's a factory right outside where my family's from, in Umbria, the little town called Gubbio. I said, there's got to be somebody I know who did this. So I go into the archive books, and I go to Umbria, I go to Città di Castello, I go right up. Sure enough, the 80th name down was my great-grandmother's name.
Wow.
My great-grandmother, without me knowing, used to harvest the tobacco for Sigaro Toscano. My great-grandmother used to harvest the tobacco for Sigaro Toscano.
It's the DJs, this classified DJs
Yes.
The little guys that you're walking the car or something.
I'm wondering if they're from the same region.